Today I have two special guests, Dina Buno and Jimmy Clare. Dina is an autism speaker and shares a story about overcoming trauma as an autistic person. Dina was in a documentary about her life, and it won a grand jury prize on the Sundance Film Festival. Jimmy shares his life on the autism spectrum and becoming a motivational speaker, author, and the founder of Crazy Fitness Guy. Please give a warm welcome to ever blessed Dina Buno and Jimmy Clare. So you have your own podcast?
Yeah.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I got a podcast and a live stream.
What's your podcast about?
Yeah, it's just a monthly podcast that promotes healthy living through autistic eyes.
Okay.
And I'm slightly autistic, and Dina's also slightly autistic.
Mm-hmm.
And we're actually two partners. Oh, there she is.
So glad you were able to join us because
yeah, you know what? I've done voiceovers too. It said you're a voiceover artist.
Yes, ma'am. How long have you been doing voiceovering?
Well, I started I had my dream come true probably since 2013, but I actually went to school for acting. And so there were a few places, you went behind. So I made a film, and then I got to do my dream come true a few times by doing some voiceovers.
Wow, congratulations. So,
what did you do? I'm sorry. I know this is Jimmy set this up, but
oh, no, it's okay.
I like to do it because, even if it doesn't make a whole lot of money, I got the opportunity because I always voice things. I did voices forever, not professionally, but I just enjoy doing it. And so I got the chance of a lifetime when I went out to LA, and some of them were in Philadelphia, and I got to have headphones on. So it was fun.
That sounds exciting. Oh my gosh, you've gone beyond what I've ever.
I'm finding out a lot of people are struggling with this. So that's one of the reasons why I like the dramatic arts, because I could pretend, and that's what it's like.
Mm-hmm.
So I did it all from the heart. So
kudos to you, Dina.
It's not so much getting paid for it. At first, I was a perfectionist. I did it well, but then I just said, well, I enjoy it. I like it. It's not the money. And I had fun.
Mm-hmm. I've noticed that too when I got into the industry. It's not a lot of money, especially when you're not a big name in lights kind of a scenario.
Well, you know what? When you believe that everything has to be for money, it took off because I do a lot of things with acting, and it's not what you think it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so people ask me to borrow money and all these derogatory things. And I'm like, I'm not a rich person. I still live in the same apartment for 17 years. And, I struggle, but I had fun. And that was the most important thing.
That's the best thing. Absolutely. Some of the questions that I had sent over, we can go ahead and get those started. So I know that you identify that you are a motivational speaker, and you've actually you are the founder of Crazy Fitness Guy. So as well as you are an autism advocate, can you tell me how that all got started? What was your journey? How did you begin your journey?
So I began my journey the beginning of 2020, and the pandemic started to form. I've started hearing about it. And I was getting nervous because how do I get my name out there? Because I'm just Joe Blow off the street. Mm-hmm. And it's well, what could I possibly do? So I started my motivational speaking career roughly the beginning of 2020. And I knew when it was Crazy Fitness Guy's third year up and running, I knew I want to do something spontaneous, different. And sometimes throughout the years, I like to add something new. Maybe it's a new product or whatever I'm doing might be. And so I was like, let's do a podcast. And I remember my first podcast interview second, third podcast interview I ever did. I was thinking, well, when somebody showed me the podcast, Someone emailed me their clip and everything. It says made by Anchor. I was like, what is Anchor? And I just Googled it, did some research and whatnot. I was like, wait, I could start a podcast? Wow. And I felt like that they were just giving me the tools to do it. And like, it wasn't even promotional or whatnot. It was emailed to me and like, I kind of have to start now.
Yeah,
and like,
sure.
I'm being handed on a silver platter. Hey, you know what? Just, you got to do this whole, start this podcast now. So I did. And it's been up and running for a year. And my website came first, crazyfitnessguy.com. Came first before the podcast. So it's been up and running. My brand has been up and running for 4 years.
Oh, wow.
And even though I would love to say that it's been the best 4 years and there's no problems, I'd be lying through my teeth.
True. I think everybody goes through the honeymoon stage with any business.
Yeah, it's like people on Instagram is like, oh yeah, it's like you have everything perfect. And it's like, how long it got me to everything to be perfect, to be exact. I'm just starting to get that into year 4, not year 1, 2, not 3. Yes, 4th time is the charm.
Yes.
In this case, it took me 9 times to even get the website up and running. So 9 times the charm.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that 3 times the charm is completely overrated. That's
Right.
for sure.
Definitely not my book.
Yeah, definitely not in mine. So in Dina, you've also created something that's called the Autism Speaker.
Right.
So what brought you about this mission and how did this become your journey?
Well, I've actually been a public speaker for 25 years or more. I guess I was diagnosed with autism and having a lot of controversies about it because, I am 54 now. I just turned 54 in like 3 months ago. So, I'm what you would call a late bloomer. When I was growing up, although I had a warrior mom who really took having children as like serious, like being the middle child, which was also kind of like hard because I wasn't the oldest and I wasn't the youngest. And my mother spoke in public starting when I went to overnight camp and spoke in public, and I would travel around and thinking it was boring, and all I could think of was that chocolate shake or that lunch after his reward. And then I was going to college, but I came home on a little break and felt very depressed. And my mom spoke out amongst a bunch of moms, and her public speaking journey was already going on about 20 years. And she said, so I went with her one time and I was like, yeah, I can relate to that. And everyone said, well, you have an advocate on your hands. And I began my journey in college going to speak about my 3rd diagnosis of autism. I was like 3 years old for the first time, and I already had learning disabilities, but I began my speaking journey, and it was about 2013. Somebody came to me, and no, it was 2010 actually. Well, I unfortunately went through a lot of trauma in my life. My life was a combination of good and not so good. And when I was 42, I was, my first husband, John, had passed away from cancer. And I went through so much tragedy. I had moved in 2006, and people were coming to me. And then, unfortunately, I had a boyfriend. They call it domestic violence, but he attacked me.
Oh, no.
And I was attacked 30 times with a knife, over 90% of my body. And people came to me and asked me to speak on domestic violence and my autism and how I came through it. And I said, for one, a lot of therapy and realizing that other people go through it, even though I had my bad days. It wasn't clear cut. And so I always felt misunderstood. And for some reason, in 2010, I had a revelation when I just realized how lucky I was that I escaped death and that my first husband taught me a lot of lessons, that there was a lot of positive motivational information out there that when you think good thoughts and you retrain the brain, that you could probably all be a motivational speaker in your own journey. And so I retrained my brain before that guy had attacked me. I kept wondering why I was surviving, and God had a plan for me. And so then I saw my mom. So it was in my blood, I guess, that, I started my journey, and then, I made a film called Dina. And I made a documentary because my very special advocate, again, I had a lot of mentors and advocates. And the guy, Dan Sickles, he was an advocate, although I babysat for him. My first career was teaching. So that's a motivation right there. So I was teaching children who had special needs. And after that happened and I was attacked and I had things knocking me down, this journey kept picking up and picking up. I was brought to my attention, I want to make a movie about special needs. And again, at the same time, when we're trying to honor his father's legacy, he said, boy, you stand out. Did you ever do any acting? Of course, So all that came about my speaking and all the things I went for degrees in college. That's what happened,
Yeah.
And during the pandemic, Jimmy and I started working together. What was it, about over a year now, Jimmy?
Feels like an eternity.
Well, yeah.
Because of the pandemic. So
what happened was an advocate for special needs named Cynthia Worth. We cannot forget her. She Ed Sickles had died 2 days shy of his 60th birthday. He was my mentor. And his partner, Darlene, runs the Action Club. And Cynthia taught my friend Danielle. And she brought Jimmy to me.
Wow.
And what happened was, I was really happy because a friend of mine named Adam, who had a lot of traumas, who came out on top, he developed a business. And unfortunately, the pandemic, it's teaching us that we have to be patient, that we both have our own journeys, but my goal is to bring Jimmy with me and actually print up business cards and because I'm an advocate. So I want us to form a business, not so much go on our own journey, but it's not about money. I mean, it helps if you have it, but a lot of my business ventures have turned into money. Not a lot, but I'm doing okay. But most of all, it's in the heart.
That's very, very true. Thank you so much for sharing that, Dina.
Yeah.
That is awesome. And I'm so sorry about your late husband and the...
yeah, I'm married now.
Congratulations. Mazel tov.
Thank you. Yeah, it's about, it's 6.5 years. I lost my first husband, and his dying wish for me was to meet another person and to go through life not alone anymore. But, I was like, okay, well, if I just have to get by having crushes on people or dating, but it seemed so uncomfortable to do that. I got out again several times, and I met my match in 2012.
Mazel tov. And you, just from listening to your story, you are such a strong, resilient woman. And it's an honor to even speak with you, Dina, because, I mean, if your life was snuffed prematurely, I would have never met such a wonderful woman like yourself here now. So thank you so much for sharing your story.
I have to tell you, though, there are many times when I have my days. I mean, considering that I have severe PTSD to go along with this, and every day, it's when people used to tell me one day at a time when I was in my 20s, that was the hardest thing, or even as a teenager. And now I really know what it's like to take 1 minute at a time, because that's all I can do. But it's made better because the average person I mean, Jimmy and I are different, but that's what we think differently to a certain point, because I realized a lot of similarities came about, which makes us special. Because the other day, Jimmy said something like, I apologize for this. And I said, you know what? You sound exactly like me. That I hope that we can stay this way, but still have our differences, because that's what makes us a good partnership, is he understands technically. I mean, it's hard because sometimes I lose patience with myself and say, why am I feeling this way today? Like, why do these sirens have to go off? Because it's torture for my ears as a person that makes my life, but I am resilient because I struggle every day with the simplest not the simplest, but, when I'm walking down the street, if a siren goes off and I'm not having a good day, it could disrupt it, but I just keep on plugging away. I always did.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, and Jimmy, because I wanted to also ask you, tell me a little bit about where you grew up and what was important to you back then.
So back then, I grew up in New Jersey. I was born in New Jersey, but technically I grew up in Pennsylvania because I've been there the longest in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to talk to you about maybe growing up in Pennsylvania, because I know quite a bit of New Jersey, but I was there for like maybe 5 years, where I've been in Pennsylvania for 19.
Oh.
Good Lord. I really got to move somewhere, move out of state or something. But when growing up in Pennsylvania, I was diagnosed with autism when I was either third or fourth grade. And people, I remember, have you ever seen the show The Sopranos?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I remember being in this office that had similar kind of walls around in the office I was being diagnosed in. And I think I was just playing with my toys and whatnot, and I had to do different stuff for this person. And the only good part about being diagnosed at that time, it got me out of school, which I absolutely hated. And I was like, oh, so I'm get to go to this person so I can get the hell out of school? Okay, sure, I go. I mean, I didn't have a choice anyway, but I was like, well, school or this place? I'll go here. Anywhere but school.
Mm-hmm.
And so this person asked me so many different questions, doing so many different tests. The one thing I did not like about her, or I mean, just about any person who diagnosed me or gave me diagnoses of many stuff, they talked like I wasn't even there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, hi, I'm right here. You might have missed me. You were talking to me before, but like, okay, just talk to my parents. Tell me nothing. Okay. And I don't think I've ever heard them say that I was autistic. But then, and I was bullied from like elementary school all the way up to high school for many different, I don't even know what the reasons were. Kids are just cruel. Mm-hmm. And like, I was also kind of heavy for my age group because I ate a lot of junk food and I didn't really care. I mean, I didn't even know what eating healthy was back then. So we, I mean, one of the things that happened to me, I lost 30 pounds with P90X, which is, from Beachbody. And once I lost that weight, I stood up to the bullies. But the reason I'm telling you this is because, like, I didn't really know I was autistic until high school when I was going to my own IEP meetings. And even then in the meetings, people were talking around me and it's like, no, this would be better for Jimmy. No, this would be better for Jimmy. I'm sitting at the head of the table. Like, I'm like, Jimmy's right here. And Jimmy thinks you're all stupid around the table talking around me.
Right.
And of course, I was warned not to speak in my IEP meeting because I bluntly state stuff out. And I was like, people were just kind of just rudish.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, well, some of these people are old timers and you got to be careful what you say.
Yeah.
Yeah, worry about what they have to say.
Right.
You know what's really crazy as an autism advocate for the Autism Society, and that's one of my jobs. They're letting advocates now, doctors who have a lot of degrees, and everybody thinks that the doctors with all the degrees, the PhDs and stuff, know more. A lot of times the teachers have to keep an IEP just like a therapist has to keep the records because the government comes out, and that's the reason why they have them, plus to make it easier. So the whole idea was the advocates, it's better now. It's not as good as it should be, but
I can make it better.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the whole thing, that you want to make it better, but we all have to watch, because if somebody came out technically and said, I have to make it better, they have these trainings nonstop. And I used to wonder, why do we have training after training? And it's because they train us. And I no longer ask that, because we go into these trainings, they teach us what to say, what not to say as a job. So you go through, it's just like going through a training for hotlines for people who are depressed. Unfortunately, sometimes people who have severe depression and they get on these hotlines to talk, they expect people to be like therapists. And so the key word is compassion, empathy, and mutual. And those are words discussing what to say, because if you give the wrong bit of information and be blunt, they don't like it. So like IEPs are nothing more than keeping records. So when I was a kid with IEPs, they did it for records, and teachers a lot of times were not able to say bad things. Unfortunately, they did. But so I learned that an IEP today is more valuable, because parents today are saying to their kids, don't worry, if the teacher believes that you're like this, that's not who you are. Because a lot of parents come back, the ones that are good, they speak from the heart, and it's true. A teacher could say, well, this child is only going to move this far. And that's
that happened too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the whole idea is, I'm just telling you that IEPs are only good for a certain time, and then you set on to the next goal. I'm just explaining that, I learned this in a training. I was going for special education, and then it got long-winded. So there's no guarantee for a perfect life. It's the guideline.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my son, I had to go through many years. I think maybe about half of his life, I was ins and outs of meetings and dealing with his IEP, the 504, his diagnosis, the actual evaluation plan, talking with his occupational therapist, behavioral therapist. I had to pay out of pocket for that. They didn't have that in the school system. So, I mean, I've gone through that, and I was just like, he has sensory processing disorder, which falls on the autistic spectrum.
It's called the umbrella, yeah.
The umbrella. Okay, I apologize. Under the umbrella.
You don't have to. You don't have to. I'm just saying. I learned it falls on the spectrum. Is just the word. It's the same thing as umbrella. So falling on the spectrum is perfect. I went through all these training classes, got an autism certification.
Nice.
Just 2 years ago. I'm continuing on with mental health because that ties in.
Yeah.
So I was going to go for social work. I chose acting because it was fun. That's what I wanted. But the idea is that you have a son, and it's all about the school of hard knocks. These teachers don't know what it's like to parent a kid all the time with autism. Mm-hmm. Some do, but the whole idea is my mom had to pay for the final autism diagnosis. And the reason was, you know why? Because I was 20 years old and starting to age out. And we went to a local autism center. And my brother was in graduate school.
Oh, wow.
And he was studying to be a psychologist. And he said, Mom, you got to take a look at this. There's some breakthroughs in the test. And like, so I sat there all day, and a lot of it was true. But in order to get a full-blown diagnosis, a lot of times you can't use certain words. You can't use like when I was diagnosed with PDD-NOS, that was on the spectrum, but I was on the autism spectrum, and PDD-NOS, none otherwise specified. That's very much what I had, except if you say
That's
autism.
what they told me too.
Yeah. Well, what happens if they say autism? Then back in my day, you could end up in a hospital because it was so dangerous, and people went for years. I mean, but I'm lucky I had something, because they said learning issues. So my comprehension was, I could read really well and understand it, but comprehension as far as words that I knew how to spell were not comprehended. So it's kind of like when you're a good reader, in order to get the right, but what's really all that hard work. See, I was the special school generation. I was lucky because 5th grade, I was in regular school. 6th grade up until 5th grade, I was in special ed. I worked my own, of course, excuse my French, I worked my butt off in school to get to where I was. Everything was a milestone, whereas, today, special schools cost more money. We actually got government funding for expensive places. So that's the whole deal there. It's kind of really crazy that it's almost the same thing with the autism world versus the regular world, that sometimes I'm real on target with what I say, but if I'm having a panic attack and someone's not understanding me, I start to freeze up. I start to hyperventilate. And it's gotten way worse since the pandemic. I feel like that I'm caught between two worlds of, it took me a while to learn to trust Jimmy, and it wasn't because he wasn't trustworthy. He's a lovely person, but there's certain people I get attached to, and it's very hard. I'm learning that we're all human, and say, hey, look, I don't feel like I want to be around anybody, or I don't like people now. I just like my cats.
That's how I feel sometimes.
Yeah, well,
I have those days.
Yeah.
A couple of days ago, well, I think it was this week, I was crying because I was having a panic attack thinking, oh my God, I have to get off the computer because it seemed foreign, whereas Jimmy's really good at it. And, I'm proud of him for doing that. But when I was growing up, we didn't have this stuff. I was trained in special needs computers when it first started coming out. So there you go. So it's autism, people thought it was behavior issues. So when I was in regular classes, I'm lucky that the people in the regular world just liked me. But when I was around the special needs world, the teacher who taught special ed thought I was calling attention to myself in 6th grade because I moved out to the regular world, and they knew I was coming from a special school. So one teacher said, you know what? Dina's used to getting off easy. And not that special ed is bad, but we're in a safe, protected world, and sometimes we need to do that. So when I was forced into a regular school because, my mom said, you know what? If we keep her in special school, such and such is going to, it's going to hinder me. That was their thought. So, we're all forced between different worlds. And the autism world and the regular world aren't always so kind, because people still call it a condition because they don't really know, that it's a neurological thing. I guess it is a condition, but when we start using the word condition, then everybody, I know for a fact that sometimes I think...
And people think it's a disease.
Oh, yeah, that too.
I will tell you this, though. Mental illness is a disease, but the world looks at it differently, that thousands of brilliant people have mental illness. They just don't talk about it. And then the other half they talk about it. And I know for a fact that I caught myself saying, well, I do this because like I have anxiety. And the movie people gave me a crash course because the whole idea is most people really thought I was amazing to let people into my world. But like there was a scene one time I was upset because like I spilled coffee. And so when the camera stopped rolling, like there was more scenes than that are more controversial. But like I caught myself saying, well, you know, I'm autistic, and if a mug breaks, it's because I did it and I deserve this. And it's this black and white thinking. So we're taught that we're not normal, and we are. It's just that our brains are kind of like wired in a different way. Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Definitely wired. And that's one of the things. Yeah. I'm sorry, Jimmy. Go ahead. Did I interrupt you?
No, I was going to just say, I was like, you know, I had teachers and other people who told me I was not going to be able to amount to anything in my life. They told me I was only going to be able to read higher than a second grade, only read it to a second grade level. I would love to meet those people again because I was like, yeah, guess what? I'm in college. So
yeah. So there you go. You can tell them to sit on it and spin pretty much, right?
yeah. I would love to see one day that they're just like Googling Jimmy Clare. It's like, holy freaking crap. It's like, he's everywhere. It's like,
wow. Like, oh man, you feel bad about that.
One thing I learned from having a husband also on the spectrum, you know, was that don't prove anything to anybody because you're going to keep wanting to do this. I mean, you want to prove it to people, but the only one you need to prove it to is yourself, because like I freed my brain up from saying, I wish they can see me now. I mean, yeah, I still think that from time to time, but like what happens is that when you go to do it for somebody else, you know, you have to prove it to yourself. There's an old saying, you know, about prove them wrong, but it's better to say, oh, but you proved them wrong, didn't you? Well, good for you, you know?
Yeah, they're not losing sleep over what they've said or done to you. So don't waste your breath on that. Just keep moving forward and be you. You know, you do you. Absolutely. Oh, Jimmy, I had a question, sir. When you have a moment in your life that you are overwhelmed or overstimulated, how do you bounce back or reset?
Well, it kind of depends on what the situation is. If I'm overstimulated by too much information, like I'm going to use a Google search as an example, and I'm going to use yesterday as an example. Yesterday, I have a podcast player on my website, and for each show notes that I do for my website, and one of the things that it was not catching the latest episode that just came out. And I'm like, okay, if all the other episodes work, why is this not working? I try unpublishing the episode to republish it, still doesn't work. And I'm like, okay, I'm getting frustrated. I'm getting annoyed. I wasted 2 hours Googling different products, different services, couldn't find exactly what I was looking for. And I was like, I'm overwhelmed. What if this tool does not work again? Or what if it never works ever again? And I was like, what do I do now? And it got me thinking, and like I see these other products, and like some of them had like different page view limits a month. It's like, you only get 10,000. It's like, yeah, and what if I was Amazon? I get 1 million in a day. And the only other higher plan was 100,000. It was like, yeah, gee. Yeah. And again, I'm not saying I'm not getting 10,000 page views in a day or a month, but I'm just like, I'm kind of like thinking long term. It's like, okay, if I'm in this long term, I'm kind of screwed if if I get that many. And then it's like, okay, so what? 2 people can 10,000 a day can see, a month can see it, and then disappears, or I don't know. So I didn't like the feeling in my system, so I decided, and so I started shutting down and whatnot. And I was like, "Come on, Jimmy, push forward." And I was like, "What can I do?" And so I decided, I'm going to email this company that I've been using for years, and if at least for a year, and see if they have any suggestions or even get back to me, because some of my other questions I asked them, they didn't get back to me.
Mm.
And not like I was angry for them at that, but it's like maybe they don't cater to free people, or I mean, like they don't give support to free users. So I was like, okay, so I decided to try that. And then like I wish I did it sooner, because after I wrote them, like maybe 30 minutes later it started working. And I was like, really? Now it starts working? And it's like, really? Did you guys have to, like this tool had to break down? Does it cause me the aggravation? Come on, this is ridiculous. So basically what happens to me, I shut down, I get overwhelmed because I started thinking all these different thoughts in my head and say, well, okay, if this company goes down, where do I go next? I don't have an answer.
Mm. Yeah, I've had an issue with something like that, and it took me 2 months, and they still said we can't help you. And I'm like, yeah, I get it, because it's like, do you only work with people who actually pay for membership or subscription, and you just kind of like put everybody else to the wayside if they're non-paying? Like, it's not cool. But so how are you able to reset, or do you do some type of meditation? Do you do your workout or fitness? Because I know based on your crazy fitness guy mantra there, you have like on your website.
So basically on my very good day, I'm able to turn the day around, but when it's too far gone, if something happened late in the afternoon, like 3 o'clock, it's hard for me to get back on track. And if I didn't do anything from morning to afternoon, I'm like, it's too far and gone for me to recapture the day. But there's other days where I was like, okay, I might have wasted a few hours in the morning, but then I was able to pull myself together. There are other days where, okay, I wasted 30 minutes, but then I was like, okay, can I get back on track? And it's like, complaining is not going to help anything with this through. But I do have my days where it's really, really good at turning around, and there's other days where I mope and complain about it because I don't know what else to do. And I know that I have stuff to do on my to-do list, but then I was like, I don't want to do it now.
Yeah, I felt like that many, many times, but that's just a whole different scenario where I'm overwhelmed with 3 kids, single mom, 4 jobs, and a dog and a cat. So that's my life in a bunch. So that's very overwhelming for me. And even like I love that the information, you have a variety of it on your website. And you do talk about fitness and lifestyle and nutrition, managing stress, self-help, as well as autism. So how can the listeners contact you and learn more about you specifically?
If they want to learn more about me, you can go to crazyfitnessguy.com, and you can follow Crazy Fitness Guy pretty much everywhere. Between me and Crazy Fitness Guy is like 100+ profiles, and what you see on the front end of the website, that's not even half of it. That's a sad part.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have a wound of information that I think all the listeners would enjoy going to your website and finding more. It's been interesting because I was reading some of the articles that you have, like specifically like regards to autism in college, like some of the struggles that you have to deal with. And, one of the things I was thinking about as time went on, as my son gets older, right now he's only 9 years old, but the thought of having like colleges be accommodating and aware of the autistic community, the umbrella of the autism, and that it's imperative that they have the option and the ability to strive if they're wanting to go to college and have the accommodations towards that. So yeah, so it's a good read. If the listeners are listening now, I strongly suggest y'all to go to Crazy Fitness Guys and see what he's got all in there. And it's amazing. Thank you so much. And I appreciate it, Jimmy, for you being a guest on my podcast. And I wanted to do in closing because I know that Dina, you, like you mentioned in the beginning, you are like a film celeb. Because I was looking at your documentary movie called Dina, and it's like you said, it follows your life in everyday scenarios as a person with autism, and I love how you made and created this documentary. Now, how can the listeners, if they're wanting to know or see your documentary film, where would this be located if they wanted to watch this?
One of the places that you on demand, Hulu, Amazon, and stream Amazon Prime. I found myself on more cable channels like Sundance. Really honored that they wanted me to be a subject because I never really found my story as fascinating. But then as time went on, I've done acting, like off Broadway and things like that, and a lot of school plays and things. So, like, I had the chance, and unfortunately, a lot of people were like, didn't always know because I kept a lot of private for fear of criticism. But, which was very hard because people were telling me like that I shouldn't really do this stuff because I'm exposing myself. So I was very gracious, from going through a lot of therapy to follow my dreams. That's why, for my own, I guess, like, for example, no subject is too hard for me to handle. I've seen it all. I've been friends with almost everybody from race, color, creed. Being special needs was really no big deal to me. I lived in two worlds, the special needs world and then forced into the regular world when they told me that when I was interviewed and when I was told that I stood out above the rest. I'm like, I've always liked to perform and be the star of everything. I don't know why I liked to be the center of attention when I was a kid. So like being on the camera was just pure therapeutic. I like missed the camera when it was gone. There was this other thing that I was too darn picky with myself. Here, I was in a documentary, so that means some of it is an acting career in itself when it's their time and their money and these big wigs above you that tell you we have to get the scene done. Also, I sat down with my husband and I calmed him down because, like, at first he was like, well, I'll do it for you. And then he kind of enjoyed it, but he was happy to see the cameras go because they were on us all the time. But I kind of missed it. And so I told myself that I was going to make it work. So, like, I know like that you do voiceovers, and that's my dream. If you know of anybody, I would definitely take the train down to New York and get them done because I enjoy it. But I was also like, so you were telling me you said, oh, I'm a big celebrity, and what happened? What else?
Yeah, I was saying you are a film celeb here, and I was just looking at your documentary, the trailer, and so forth. And now that I know that you are actually on some other websites, I do have Hulu and.
Also go to my page, which is the Dina movie, and what I am frustrated about is that I'm a real person in one way, but then, acting and cameras, it's also kind of pretend, but at the same time, I kind of mix those things. So there were times in the film where you see some scenes that are touchy, and yes, it was really me, but I have a way of really, getting into a role, and I can cry at the drop of the hat because, like, I've been in plays and someone said, how come you're so natural? And I said, well, I can be happy 1 minute and it's not that I'm bipolar or anything. I do have anxiety disorder, so that could do it. But I get real emotional. The members who celebrated the Pride Month in June, I attended some rallies throughout the movie. And I was always interested because I believe meeting people from everywhere. So somebody didn't like some person who was, so religious that they were criticizing me for supporting LGBTQ. And that was the same company did a film on LGBTQ and trans people. And I've met some of the nicest people who were like drag queens. And it fascinated me that we're all really going through the same. Like when I was growing up and going to college, it was very unheard of They did have services, but you had to scratch deep. Where when I went to college, community college, and then going to school, and had the dream of going into acting, the world wasn't very kind to gay, transgender, and, that whole movement. The acting world would shun them, so you had to keep it a secret. And I was so tired of it that I developed an anxiety disorder. And so now I let myself be free because it's one less worry, but I've never really cared what people look like. I mean, I've always supported interracial marriage. I think it's beautiful if you find your soulmate and they're a different color than you. I mean, this is going back for generations. When people are narrow-minded and they say to me, well, what are your parents going to say if you're married to an African-American person? Well, who cares? I'm not married to an African-American person, but if I was. So why I'm so different. And that's why I had to say to myself, when I get anxiety, look at me, I'm not so bad, that I'm not judgmental. I don't have one judgmental bone in my body. I don't care if somebody is a same-sex marriage. I think it's beautiful. The majority of my friends are from all walks of life. Antonio Santini is of Latino descent, and he said, we all have our problems, but I love the tight-knit community that they have. You know what I mean? So what I'm saying, speaking in general, that you said that you grew up speaking two different languages.
Understanding two different languages. One, unfortunately, I was not fluent in, but I'm able to read it with a fluent tongue, but I'm not able to comprehend. Yeah, so
because I was listening to you and you speak very good English, and I really never thought about that. I never really thought, because it's about changing our thoughts and our perspective. So this helps me understand that, people who are autistic in general, whose parents don't want to know about it, and they're just autistic and they want to take their children everywhere in America to get diagnosed for their own benefit, but they don't get them the services. This is what I'm saying. It's just like not learning how to speak English, or if you're French and you're so afraid of the unknown. And as much as I get anxiety because I am on the spectrum, I am 54 years old, and thanks to Jimmy, dealing with me having anxiety, and then having to do the computer, I know how to get on, but these little technical terms, that kind of impresses me. Now I'm not so afraid because I know that he's not going to yell at me. But when I was yelled at for being autistic and yelled at for being different, like, why can't you act better? Because she has behavior problems and she's trouble. That would be like when I would flap my hands, because when I was a little girl and I was like 2 years old, by the time I was 13, I was still getting blamed for that. Someone told me in therapy a hard lesson. For one, when you regurgitate information that comes out of your brain because you're autistic, you won't let it go. So your life's going to be a lot better. And then around my 50th birthday, I said, my life is so much freer today than it was like 30 years ago. But I think it's learned experience. So when you let the prejudice go, I happen to love the LGBTQ community, but I get bashed a lot and yelled at. It's the same thing. Like, people make fun of people with Down syndrome. It's the same thing that when I started accepting the label that I was different and let go of these things, like I was autistic, like special needs is a nicer way of saying it, but yet people don't know what to say. Like, I call it neurodiversity, because we are diverse, but neurologically there is an impairment, but it sounds better, doesn't it? That did you ever hear of neurodiversity? Because it's a movement.
Yeah, neurodivergent.
Neurotypical is us. And that means that our brains take in information a different way and it gets scattered around the brain and lands in another. And my mom told me from birth, that my brain was set up about wires, and it probably could be set up differently now, but it landed you take a piece of paper and you rip it up into many pieces, and then it floats around the brain. She told me that my brain was like a television set and that it was wired differently.
Absolutely.
But I'm doing the best I could for myself.
Mm-hmm. And from where I'm standing, Dina, you're doing a wonderful job. You guys are awesome. And I see you. I see you with or without your autism. Like you said, I like to respect everyone, no matter if you are of creed or of race. And I mean, I wish the world could actually abide by those simple rules of life, to be respectful and honest and love each other no matter the circumstances. Absolutely. And Dina, Jimmy, it has been an honor. I greatly appreciate having you guys here as my guests.
Yeah. Did you know that my movie won the Sundance Film Festival Grand Prize?
Oh, no, not at all. No, that would be great to have that information so I can put that all in the shows. Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing was Jimmy was going to put that, but we got busy talking about, he was going to, put that, but I was at Sundance Film Festival and my husband and we rented a house and we were there for a week. But the second week when we went home, I got a phone call. We were there for all these things. And then there was a award ceremony and, we made it to Sundance. So, I didn't know we were going to win the competition, but the thing is these guys won second place at Tribeca. But we're all over the world at touring festivals. I've got to go to some when I got to go to all the movies that they had. It's like sitting and watching. And then I got to speak at a lot of things and be a guest at other people's film festivals. And
wow, congratulations.
And it was pretty amazing. We were at the Next Fest. We placed there too in California. And we were at the Jewish Film Festival, the Castro Theater, and it was interesting. I got to meet wonderful people like Gregory Smith from Everwood and from Parenthood, that cast Parenthood. And did you know about Parenthood where the boy had autism? And
yes.
Well, I got to meet the cast and Dan Sickles. Danny went to school with Sarah Ramos, who played Hattie on Parenthood. Nice. And they surprised me with America Ferrer seeing the film, and she had a festival out there, and all these good people.
Wow. Well, congratulations. Absolutely. That's wonderful.
My movie was in London for 2 weeks, and I was out there for a week. The companies pay for these trips. And so we're all these little mini ones. And the thing that's exhausting is that you travel the world and it's fun, but you're exhausted. And so the pandemic taught my husband and I to be blessed.
Slow down. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has been really amazing, but at the same time, I had to get really creative, with painting and all that, because my career as far as the editors and, I'm writing and self-publishing because the editors quit because of the strikes. We were going virtual. Conferences got slowed down.
Yeah. Well, I commend you on the journey you have gotten so far. And it's been wonderful. I'm so glad to meet both of y'all, Jimmy and Dina. It's been a pleasure. You have a wonderful...
It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, it's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I'm glad you exist.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And
thanks
Jimmy,
for having us.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, have a wonderful weekend.
Okay, bye. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you for listening to Noise Palooza Zion podcast. If you yourself is a small business owner, entrepreneur, musician, or artist, or liked what you heard, please share and follow. I am on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, or contact me at www.jasminecastillovoice.com and stay tuned for the next upcoming episode.